Alrighty, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Well, thank you all for joining us today on this journey into mastering your marketing ROI. Just a couple of housekeeping items and then we'll jump into it. First off, Mary Beth on our team will be fielding any questions or comments that come through. So if you have any questions throughout that you'd like to ask or talk through at the end of the presentation when we go through the Q&A session, just message her
Can't hear
directly
anything.
and we'll open things up at that
I mean, I
point.
reconnect.
Somebody's everybody muted. Just keep an eye on that, Ryan. The second thing is we are going to have some fishing themes throughout the presentation. If you don't like fish, just hang out in the boat with us. We're not going to ask you to jump in the water or anything like that. All that said, how do fish always know how much they weigh? Because they have their own scales. Woo! And on
Ooh.
that note, my name is Ryan. I am the Chief Fungi CEO here at Fungi. Teller of bad dad jokes. I do have a daughter, so it's justified. And I'm going to be talking for a good portion of today's presentation. Also with me are Ryan Bowles, who's our head of growth, aka Ryan number two, aka the Deuce. And we also have Lindy Pfaffenbach, who is our digital lead strategist, also known as the only calm, cool, and collected person here at Fungi. Also tells bad jokes, so we can save those for the end.
Hi, everyone. Good to be here.
Excellent. Okay, let's get into it. So, what's the real reason why we're here today? Because most companies feel that they're wasting money on their marketing. There's a famous department store merchant, John Wanamaker, who felt that half of his money being spent on advertising was wasted. Trouble is, he didn't know which half. Uh, Fungi feels that John was 50% right. He was half right. Our observation is that none of your marketing budget is wasted if you're properly measuring it and learning from it.
It's a really good John Wanamaker impression of you,
Did
by
you
the way.
like that? Yeah. Well,
I
we're
did.
gonna see John a few times. He goes along with our fishing theme. So what we're going to talk about today is the Fungi 5 for improved ROI. Essentially, 5 steps you can use to improve your marketing ROI within your own organization. We'll start with establishing some baseline metrics, kind of where you are today. Then aligning on what are your broader objectives, like the business objectives, like what's your revenue target for this year? How much are you looking to grow or change? Um, from there, we're going to talk about the sales and marketing teams and how they interact and how we track sales and lead generation. And once we've got all that data kind of compiled or the data philosophy compiled, we'll identify what the top channels are and get to work on optimizing them. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about establishing the baseline.
Well, hold on, Ryan. Before we dive into this stuff, we need to figure out who we're fishing for and what we're going after. Like this just seems like we're jumping a little bit ahead of ourselves.
That's a good point. There's like a step zero, isn't there?
Maybe there's a step zero. I don't know. Maybe there's a slide for that. Oh, look at that. Here's a slide. So
Look at Mr. Wanamaker. He is miserable.
fishing out of the wrong pot. So yes, I think the quickest way to prove Mr. Wanamaker wrong or right here in wasting half of our marketing is if we don't know who we're going after, right? And having everybody understand in the organization, who is our target audience, what type of fish do we want to go after, and where are these fish? Where can these fish be found, right? So it's really understanding, defining, and bringing in your ICP, your ideal client profile, into play here, right? And a lot of companies will have their ICP already very well defined, right? They know exactly who that is they sell to, what defines a good lead for them, who the right audience, what the right title is, all of those sorts of things. However, they're just not implementing it across the organization. Maybe the sales department has defined it really, really well, but marketing is unaware, right? Other times, some clients don't know who their ICP is, right? And you ask them, who do you sell to? And they're like, well, oh, we sell to anybody in this industry. Well, spoiler alert, no one sells all things to all people. I don't care how good you are, right? And I would imagine most people on this call are not working for a large enterprise, company like Coca-Cola, who does sell to anybody and everybody, right? So it's identifying who it is we sell to, and then who it is we don't sell to, right?
Yeah.
And helping us prioritize and actually come up with a way to say, this is a great client for us. This is not a great client. Here at Fungi, what we believe is we have a way of actually tracking that in a calculator, that we actually track different metrics and things that are important to us. And so we've got a fairly mature, we'd like to think at least, ICP developed here to understanding exactly who it is that is a great lead for us, and who we really want to focus on, right? I think one big thing, a lot of people fall into a trap of this real quick is, oh, who do you want to sell to? Who's an ideal client? Bigger, right? Bigger is always better is a kind of common misstep that I think a lot of people fall into. They think that they just want to find the companies that the largest they can talk to is always the better thing, right? They want more whales. Well, the real question is, can you handle more whales, right? Do you need a bigger boat? You got the boat you came with, right? So maybe the answer is, oh, I don't need 4 more big whales. I need 20 more tuna, right? Whatever
Right.
the case is, right? Let's identify and figure out exactly who we're looking for there. So once we establish who we're looking to fish for, then I think we can get to this next step here. So thanks for letting me jump in. I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I was going to say before we jump to what kind of fish we're fishing in, let's meet back up with Mr. Wanamaker. Now he's in the right pond, aka the ocean. But we need to determine kind of like what is he catching out the gate without having a super targeted marketing approach. And in order to do that, we've got sort of this two funnel structure that we apply. This is the ultimate list of things that you'll need to properly measure ROI and also measure your marketing activities. I recognize that not everyone can collect all of this information from day one, but a good portion of it is available if we kind of dig deep into the various platforms as well as just internal processes. So on the left-hand side, we have a lot of the familiar marketing metrics, the impressions, how many people saw our ads, how many people clicked, how many converted into a lead. Maybe they filled out a form or picked up the phone to call somebody. And then ultimately, how many of those ended up becoming closed-won customers. On the right-hand side, we have our ROI metrics. So how much do we actually spend both in hard costs, like on advertising, as well as just resource costs. And then what was our cost per conversion? How much did it cost us to get our lead in the door? And then we can kind of boil that down even further to what was the cost to acquire a customer and ultimately get down to return on investment, return on that initial spend investment. So a better way to look at this is through we have a calculator that I'm going to take you to here in just a second. And that calculator has a series of inputs that take you kind of from the start, looking at the overall leads that you're currently getting, all the way down through what your gross margin of sale is and what your average customer value is. We're not going to jump into all these details today, but just know that when you use the calculator, you're welcome to use it. We'll provide a link to you afterwards if you'd like to experiment and do this on your own. And for today's call, we're going to be mostly focused around this maximum cost per lead for ROI because once we have a good grasp of that number, it will help us to inform like which channels we should optimize first, how much we should budget, things along those lines.
Right. And I think this is just a really helpful way, right? Not to necessarily shoot for a particular number. It's just to let you know, right? What that number is and what's a good number to target, right? So based on this will kind of let you know, hey, if I'm spending, I need to be spending $145 or less to gain this lead. So if you go down a channel and it's like, man, this is costing me $200, it's probably not worth the while, right? So just giving you more insight into how to track this.
Yeah. And trying to keep it simple, we recognize that all organizations might be more or less complicated than this. Like if you're just running a straight e-commerce store, these numbers are going to be a lot more straightforward than if you have like a really long sales cycle with multiple individuals involved. And so there may be some additional stages, but I would say that this number, so somewhere in like the 50 to 100 leads range, is pretty typical for what we see when we first start working with somebody. And the qualification percentages is probably pretty similar too. So we look at, of all the leads that we get, people that fill out forms, spam calls, all those things, maybe about 30% of that are people that are genuinely interested in our product. And of those 30, maybe another third of those is actually qualified to buy something from us. And then it kind of transitions to the sales team where we've got, what are your close rates? How many customers are you closing? Maybe somewhere in the 20 to 50% range. And then finally, customer annual value and gross margin is going to vary really wildly too per company, but we see it anywhere between $1,000 and $100,000. Um, so understanding these variables, hopefully most of you have some grasp of this and are able to kind of flesh it out. But what that'll do is it'll calculate over here for you, ultimately how many marketing qualified leads, sales qualified leads, how much revenue was generated from them, and what is that ultimate cost per lead in order to reach some kind of break even or profitability. So in our example here, we've got $145, meaning maybe flyers is the way to go. And I know I can spend 145 bucks on flyers and get one new lead, and or per lead, and that's gonna result in those downstream opportunities. But we use this to kind of build out an ideal budget, typically work with organizations to help them establish, is it 1,000, is it 10,000, how much should we be spending in order to fill the top of this funnel. All right, and we will come back to the calculator. And if anybody has some preliminary numbers they'd like to plug in, feel free to send those to Mary Beth, and we can certainly walk through some examples later in the presentation. All right, so we have got some baseline information. We're in the right pond, and we know that uh, we know roughly like where we're at today, but we need to look at the future. And in this case, Mr. Wanamaker wants to put more tunas in the boat. He's very excited that he's caught this particular tuna. But at a broader scale, we need to find out what are the company's maybe financial goals or other long-term stretch goals that marketing can help to influence. And that starts with really just a discussion around what are we looking to do next year or do this year. So some examples that we've heard are, just simple, straight, let's increase revenue. It could be that we're looking to increase the number of net new customers or maybe grow the existing customer base, or we could be looking at a more diversified revenue approach. We've had a couple of clients recently who have very large clients that maybe represent 40, 50, 60% of their annual revenue. And that's a risk for most of these clients. You might have to, if you lose that business, you might have to lay someone off, or that same business might be asking for terms that are unrealistic or causing other stresses. So in that case, maybe a more diversified approach to growing existing accounts or expanding into others might be beneficial. And so now that we know what our max cost per lead threshold is, how do we go about determining what marketing objectives to set? So we know what our overarching financial goal is. We know what some of our other sub goals are, and we need to determine how we're going to optimize. And we can do that at different stages of the funnel. So at each stage of the funnel, there are strategies that can improve ROI. I might kick it over to Lindy to talk a little bit about this because this is more her area of expertise.
Yeah, so I think you had a great example of a really good goal of being like net new leads, net new customers for the year. And a way to do that, how I look at it, is looking at how let's just get more leads in. If we know they're being qualified, they are working well over time, we turn up the volume. We say, okay, how can we get more in? Maybe that's increasing specific ad budgets or putting more, more into one bucket over another. So this is where you're looking at each one of these depending on the goal and then coming up with campaigns and strategies around them to hopefully increase them up. So
Yeah, and I like the idea of, I mean, if we're just looking at straight net new customers and we already have a good sort of marketing and sales qualification process, then just feeding that top of funnel should, in theory, help us to get to that diversified approach versus, maybe looking at this bottom of funnel optimization where we could be doing cross-sell communications, upselling, having sales reach out to old or lapsed customers or things along those lines. All of that can help to improve. And so we have different communications that take place at different areas of the funnel.
I think the important thing there is also just to make sure that whatever your company goals are, right, you have those marketing goals are tracking and that you're able to work towards those and track towards them, right? If it's we're tracking the number of MQLs and increasing volume because we have a company objective of increasing net new clients, right? So they're all our marketing objectives and our sales objectives are lining up with the same types of company objectives and are able to track using the same language and terms.
And that, I mean, leads us right into this next section, which is talking about really connecting our marketing and sales team communications. So we know John knows he's in the right spot now. He's been recording all the fish that he's caught, where he caught them, what kind of bait he used, and we know what we want to catch, which means we know what our baseline performance is and where we want to go. So now it's time to make sure that sales and marketing teams are aligned and that we're all rowing in the same direction. That shouldn't be too challenging, right? Wrong. Sales and marketing historically always point the finger across the table. I've seen it 1,000 times. So let's hash this out right now. Ryan, let's pretend we're in a sales meeting. How are the leads?
The leads are terrible. Yeah. So I think pretty often you'll hear a conversation where, okay, the leads, how are the leads last week? Well, we had 20 new prospects that the sales team met with. That was great, but guess what? They were all so bad. None of them are going to close. I don't know. We just need better leads. Like I just feel like everyone we talk to, like, they're just not the right person, or it's not the right time. I don't know. They're just bad. We just need better leads. But we need more leads too. Can we just I don't know. That's we just need more and we need better leads.
yeah, but Ryan, hold on. Last week, just I was looking at the numbers this morning. We had a 327% increase on our views on our website, and I tracked 152 form fills. The campaign's working well. We're sending you leads. You just need to close some deals.
But who were those coming from? Like we had more people show up to the website, but do we even care who those people were? Do they even want what it is we sell?
That's really good questions. You know, I
All
don't
right,
know.
all right, all right. And see. So let's go about it the right way and see how the conversation should go. Ryan, can you elaborate a little bit on how the leads were last week for me and Lindy?
Yeah, sure. So last week, sales team met with 20 marketing qualified leads. We appreciate the pre-qualification. 15 of those turned into actual opportunities, and two we think are flagged to actually close next month.
Ryan, okay, I love hearing this. It's really helpful. I'm going to go back and look at where we sent those from. Where are they coming from? What happened and see what worked. So next week we might talk a little bit more about scaling, but for right now, can you tell me about the five that did convert and what worked really well for them?
Yeah, sure. So I think three of them were just kind of trying to get information, really no follow-ups. They were the right person, just not the right time. I think that was fine. One of them really was just probably just too small for us, right? I
Okay.
think what they were looking for really just outside their budget is outside of our capabilities. The last one was pretty interesting, really interesting company and a really big logo, but it was just a sales guy, right? And like his boss's boss is really who we should be talking to. But they also don't really fit our ICP as well.
Okay. Well, no, that's helpful. I'm going to take those and look a little bit deeper, like what's happening and how we can make changes.
Great. Yeah, let's get more of the 15 that we had already.
Mhm.
I love the discussion that takes place when we can
No,
just
I'm in this webinar, but
I love the discussion that can take place when we can all have a good conversation and get that feedback loop going. It sounds like we all want the same thing. We all want more leads, we want better leads, we want more customers, we want revenue to grow. I know as a CEO, I love to have the teams talking almost as much as I love looking at data. Speaking of. So let's talk a little bit about the data that we can capture and share between the sales and marketing teams. Most of you probably have some form of CRM, whether it's HubSpot or Salesforce or a spreadsheet or an email contact list or something along those lines. We love the idea of having a single source of truth that can be shared with both sales and marketing, used by both sales and marketing. So, sales obviously from a customer relationship management standpoint, making sure that they can see the history on the customer and communicate and track deals and things along those lines, but also for marketing to be able to gain insights into leads that we're sending over and kind of what has transpired with those. Ryan, you want to talk a little bit about your side of things within the CRM?
Yeah, I mean, I think most people, at least when they think of a traditional CRM, think of the sales pipeline, which is absolutely the most important thing from a sales perspective and a sales team being able to track where an opportunity is in the pipeline, right? And every pipeline is different based on the company. But right where it is from initial, hey, I'm interested in your services to I'm ready to buy and pay, and being able to track. But then what's also really important is so having that one source of truth is as we're receiving those leads, if we can get from marketing, hey, where did this lead come from? What ad did they click on? The who, what, where, when, and why, right? Did they say they were interested in a certain service or product initially? So I know to frame my sales conversation around that. And then in that same sales record, right, the salesperson is able to then log the different notes, the actual live conversations, which is gold, right? Because it's the first time we're actually interacting boots on the ground with actual customers. And as long as the sales team is able to log that in a record that the marketing team can get to, they're able to come back and understand, get some of the feedback that, right, is kind of on paper up until that point. But then actually, so not every marketing person can sit on every single sales call. But if the salesperson is able to log those call notes in a CRM that marketing has access to, it starts to create a nice little feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so from a marketing side, and when you're leaving notes and you're doing those tools, we can use the tools like HubSpot, come in and just look through it, understand what prospects were from what strategies, what campaigns, and what messaging, and figure out what worked, but also what didn't work. So with that visibility, I know, what dollars are being spent wisely. I think that's the most important thing we need to be conscious of as the marketing side. So having that single source of truth is really useful. And it's really important to me because like what I'm doing and what we're doing on the marketing side, right, is going back into the platforms like Facebook and MailChimp and saying, okay, I'm going to connect the dots from what worked and what may need changes. I also love using Google Analytics. That's where you're getting your website data from. And that's what I can monitor what is happening on the website, watch for trends, see what pages people are reading, maybe what videos they're watching, and then what any action they can take. So pulling that all together is our ideal plan.
And I think like when you look, so back here from like an executive level, it's really nice to see inside the CRM where the original source came from and what the value of that opportunity is. But then also in analytics and Google Analytics, we can see, where leads are coming from, but also how they're interacting with the website and the various different features. And so ultimately, it paints this picture, I think, for Ryan to a certain degree, but especially for Lindy, where, she can really see from start to finish to even like after they've become a closed one customer, if we do have upsell and cross-sell opportunities, how's the customer responding to that? So having, kind of like these, I'll just say two primary data sources being the kind of activity metric data source, like your website analytics and the platform analytics, as well as the more ROI driven or the CRM analytics, having, some financial information in there can be hugely helpful at identifying your top channels. So I think we've got a good handle on some of the qualitative and quantitative data that we can gather, and now we can delve deeper into our top performing channels. So right here, Mr. Wanamaker has now documented all of his things, and he knows where he wants to go fish, and even what bait he wants to use. But we do need to just still kind of tweak in on what are the key channels and how do they overlap. So one thing to note is that an individual is probably not going to interact with your brand just one time before they buy the product or buy the service. There's going to be multiple different touch points. This could be them initially doing a search in Google and then coming back via maybe a retargeting ad, a display ad that they saw, hearing about you on a commercial. Um, and then maybe they ultimately sign up to attend a webinar like this one or to download a white paper, or maybe there's some kind of free consultation that they can get or demo. And that helps to get them kind of into that marketing pipeline where they can then be nurtured. But it's very rare that they're going to just come in through one source and buy the first time. It's very unlikely. So I recommend, looking at multiple different channels when you're doing this assessment. You can definitely see the original source, but look at other ways in which they're interacting with you before you discount any one particular channel for performance. And once you can kind of understand, I mean, obviously the top couple that are sending the most traffic is the ones where you want to focus your attention on. Um, and we have a lot of different things that we would use to test once we've identified the top performing channels. One of my favorite things to do is to take like a landing page or a contact page or contact section on a website and swap out a hard sell form, which is just a, contact us form, with something like a webinar sign up or a white paper download or something where they don't have to commit to and know that somebody's going to be calling them up within an hour to sell them something. They can kind of learn more information, get more comfortable and familiar with the brand. But as you can see, there's, and this is just like a tiny sampling of different things you can test, but um, understanding what your activity metric and your desired ROI metric or ROI outcome is as you go into this allows you to more effectively test this. So lots of acronyms up here, but for our landing page, conversion rate being the activity metric, how can we get somebody to sign up and submit their information? And then the desired outcomes, we're trying to increase the marketing leads for that. And happy to come back to some of these later in the Q&A section, but just wanted to put some up there on the board for you. All right. So I did want to ask, show of hands, how many people find this chart confusing? The one on the right-hand side. Looks like pretty much everybody that's got their camera on is raising their hand. It should. It's a model for optimizing tasks using physics-informed neural computing. Don't be like this. Trying to optimize too many variables at once is going to just result in a lot of chaos and not really a good true test. It's going to confuse you. It's going to confuse everybody else. So once you've identified those top, 1 to 3 channels, just pick one variable to optimize at a time. Just pick one of these. Don't try and do all 5 of them as an example. Cool. All right. So now comes the fun part. I don't think Ryan's going to interrupt me with a step 4.3 on this.
You have
Um,
permission to proceed.
Excellent. So John has got some fish in the boat. Seems to have a good thing going for him. Now it's time to focus on continuous optimization. And the method is simple. It's the scientific method. We're just going to come up with some ideas of what we might want to test. We're going to hypothesize as to what we think the end result's going to be. We're going to measure that, and then that will produce, either a success or a failure on our initial test, and we'll come up with some new ideas. So there's different ways that we can do this. I would say, starting kind of towards the bottom of the funnel would be where you're going to see the biggest results initially. So that those sales and marketing leadership, those people talking about what our customers searching for, what are they saying when we get on the call, what are some key challenges, all of that can feed into the marketing messaging, where we target, who we're talking to, all of those things can be really helpful. And we can also experiment with new channels. If you have maybe just one or two channels that provide most of your new customers or new leads, try something different. Try social media ads or paid search ads or something along those lines. Definitely, similarly, user experience, looking at your website, or other ways that people communicate with you. Maybe they walk into your storefront. Are there ways that you can improve that interaction, in order to get people that are maybe just testing the waters to actually opt in? And that's where things like that soft sell form that I mentioned earlier could be a nice way to introduce somebody to the company without them, having to talk to a sales rep. No offense, Ryan. And then last but not least, we've got competitor replication or differentiation. Your competitors are doing things for a reason, so there may be a reason to do some similar things to them to experiment and see if that if it goes well for you, because they're spending money there. So there could be a good outcome. The other thing is to just look for ways to differentiate yourself from your customers as well, whether it's new markets or other value propositions or other things you can change with your communications. Okay, so if you take nothing else away from today's conversation, know that I am an excellent fisherman. This is me and my grandfather before he died. As you can see, I have the biggest fish, and I have two of them, so I'm pretty awesome. Um, but all joking aside, the top things I hope you remember is to document your client profile. If you haven't, you should really do that before you do anything else. Know who you're marketing to. Establish a baseline of your financial and activity-based metrics. Define the marketing goals, but make sure that they're aligned with your company's overarching objectives. Are we looking at revenue growth? Are we looking at, customer diversification? Do we want just a bunch of net new logos? What are we looking to do there? And then ensure that your sales and marketing teams are communicating and have some kind of single source of truth that they're operating out of, so that you can review that data and provide feedback to one another. And then finally, identify those top channels and optimize, optimize, optimize. Now, the question that I'm sure is on everyone's mind, what is this $1.2 million? Um, the answer is it's net new revenue that one company was able to earn using our ROI methodology. And they did it over a 9-month period. So I'm going to spend just a couple minutes going through this, and then we'll jump to the Q&A because I know we're 12:37, so we're pretty much at time. But we'll just go down the steps, talk through that, and then if we want to go back and review this or review some other stuff, we can certainly do that. So step zero, this is an actual screenshot of an ICP that was developed. This company is looking at sales leaders, in particular, VPs, directors, and CEOs, sales managers as their target audience, working for companies that are 100 plus people in these industries. So we know who our ICP is. Step one or two, whichever one you want to call it, they looked at all of the leads that they had collected over the last year. and they plugged in the number of those leads that became marketing qualified. I will say this is an abnormally high number. I think it's because there was not a lot of ways to get leads for this organization, and they were pretty tight with how they monitored those leads that came in. So they had real strict criteria for people that became leads. Subsequently, they had a high percentage of people that went from being a lead to being sales qualified opportunities, and they closed about half of those sales qualified opportunities. So, and that with an average order value per customer of 36,000 and a gross margin of 20%, we've got a $1,400 um, max cost per lead for ROI threshold, which is pretty high. I mean, that's especially when we're talking about leads. We're not even talking about like customers or sales qualified opportunities. Now, they did not spend $1,400 per lead to get a new lead, but it was that was kind of like the maximum that they could get to. So as far as the alignment with the company's overall objective for the year, they wanted to grow 15% year over year, and they wanted to invest in new scalable channels. They wanted to diversify away because most of their inbound leads came from organic traffic, people just searching out on Google. And Google kept changing their algorithms, and they still, Google AI and everything, the AI overview, all of that has really uprooted how a lot of these companies are doing business now. So in the sales and marketing pipeline alignment stage, we identified the customer ICP. We matched that with the lead source, and this company was also using HubSpot, well, HubSpot and Salesforce. And then they had their sales qualification layer, so sales qualified leads, marketing qualified leads, accepted leads, and closed one. And then they had their lead owners and then the lead opportunities. So the sales and marketing teams could see what source and in some cases different search terms that was being searched um, through Google Organic and through paid search that resulted in leads for them. So under the top channel identification, this is where we did an assessment and found that, 80% of their traffic to their website was coming from organic. And a lot of the other traffic was already kind of earned traffic, meaning people that came back there directly or came through email marketing, or even through referral sources that were companies that were familiar with them. So there's not a lot of people that are unfamiliar with the business other than those that are searching Google. And that represented 45% of their marketing qualified leads. That said, those qualified leads that were getting dumped into the top of the pipeline, of those, about 80% of the sales qualified leads was coming from these other sources, the direct and the email marketing. Um, and overall, when we looked at the conversion rates for the website, because of the sheer volume of really organic traffic, but also some of this other traffic, we could see that like people were not closing. We were not seeing a lot. The percentage of people that should have been getting opted into forms, typically we target somewhere in like the 2 to 4% lead conversion rate on a website of people filling out forms. So we're getting a mix of irrelevant traffic, and we also have a sort of tough user experience. So then they set about optimizing and identified some new channels, scalable channels to align with their business objectives. So they introduced advertising through Google, social media advertising, and remarketing, retargeting ads, as well as updates to the website to help improve conversion rates. So introduction of new landing pages, using heat mapping tools like this one to track where people clicked and scrolled to on the page to help kind of optimize the user experience there. And then ultimately that led to a complete overhaul of their website to help improve conversion rates from that standpoint. And at the end of the day, they generated 16% lift in revenue within the first 9 months of the program. So fun projects, fun things to do. All right, I've talked long and hard enough. Could we do we have any questions, Mary Beth, that we want to talk through? And people again feel free to put a message in the chat for Mary Beth, and we're happy to jump back in the deck as well for any questions.
Yeah. So one of the questions that we had was, how do you decide when to double down on a channel versus when you should pivot?
How do you decide to double down on a channel versus when to pivot? Yeah, I
Mhm.
think when we look at that customer acquisition cost, we'll back it up to here. Well, let's back it up to here. Um, I mean, I would say if you're seeing pretty consistent return, like a consistent matching this max ROI, you would definitely want to reinvest in that channel. Like if we're generating consistent leads that are converting into customers, you definitely want to scale that channel if you can. Now, in the case of like inbound, like organic search or people coming referrals from customers, that gets a little bit trickier, but I would say that it probably varies a little bit based on the specific channel that you're talking about. Um, I don't know if that person wants to chime in or add additional details. Ryan, were you going to say something just now?
So
Oh, okay. Sorry, it looked like you were about to talk.
Um, I'll let you know if I get more details. We had another question, kind of, I mean, similar-ish when you're talking about pivoting, but like, how do you recommend testing a new channel without wasting too much budget?
Yeah. So I would probably again come back to this max cost per lead for ROI. When you're looking at these areas of your business, you can optimize a new channel while still setting that figure or still having that figure in mind. So let's say with most of our clients, we would recommend something like 3 months to really give out a new channel, to give it enough time to percolate, to give enough time to materialize. Um, and you would need to look at certain elements like, for instance, with paid search, you might be running up against budgetary concerns if you set your budget too low. So there's going to be like a certain cost per click that will be required for that in order for you to rank well. And then based on how much you're going to spend on those clicks, your total budget could get out of hand. I mean, in attorney land, it might be 10 or $15,000 might only get you a couple hundred clicks to your website. And then, you're just not getting maybe enough statistically significant data to make a decision on whether or not that generated enough business or generated enough leads and interest. Um, Whereas, you might have other channels like, say, email marketing is a great one to invest in because you already have that contacts information. They're familiar with your company. And so, sending out a couple extra emails from a cost perspective is it's not gonna cost you nearly as much as breaking out into like a new advertising space.
I think the biggest thing is to set, when you start a campaign, is set objectives up front, right? What are our KPIs? What is our maximum cost for effective ROI that we're going to set? We're looking at the screen here. How many new leads by the end of this campaign do we want to produce at what capacity, right? What metrics that we use here, and then set that time. I think Ryan mentioned, kind of 90 days minimum of kind of pouring everything what you have into it. And at the end, let's go back, pull up this same chart, right? How many leads did it produce? How many converted? What margin rate? What was our cost? What was our total cost? And if the numbers, if these things that we had decided at the beginning all looked well, then it's probably worth continuing investing. If these numbers aren't producing that, right, it gives us a very firm way to review it and go back, as opposed to, well, we're just not sure yet.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the questions we had.
All righty. Well, if there are no other questions, then we can kind of wrap up. guess we can give 1 or 2 more minutes and we'll just kind of close things out. But so we'll send the recording of this. We just need to get it uploaded and we'll send that to you all either this afternoon or tomorrow morning, just depending on how long it takes to render out. But we very much appreciate more people showed up than I expected to this, so that's great. Thank you all for coming to this. This is the first of several webinars that we have planned, so we'll send details out through our email newsletter on the next one as that comes up. I think we're going to do something around branding, a collaboration with one of our other strategic partners. So stay tuned for that, and thanks for joining.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, y'all.